Hi, and welcome back to Weight Journey. So, I've lost about 25 pounds so far during the pandemic, and I have done a lot of things wrong, a few things right, and I've learned some lessons so far along the way. So, I want to share those with you right now. Okay, lesson number one. So, I started noticing, especially during the pandemic especially the time when we were shut in, I was eating things that I wouldn't even normally eat. And I started to analyze that, and I was eating out of boredom, anxiety, stress, all the different emotions that we have all been experiencing through this pandemic, but also in general sometimes. I mean, I ate out of boredom or, whatever I was feeling before the pandemic, so I can't even blame it on that. But one thing I've been trying to do and getting a little bit better at is trying to channel those feelings and channel them into something fun, creative, different. So I started this YouTube channel. That's one thing that I did that's a little bit fun and different. And I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about that topic at a later time because I think it's very, very important for really everyone to channel their different feelings into something at least more fun and creative and something that you can enjoy rather than, channeling it through just eating. So that is the first lesson that I learned, is kind of taking different feelings, especially feelings you're struggling with, like, either anxiety or fear or those types of feelings. And they don't even have to be that severe. You're just feeling a little bit anxious. So, hey, I'll pick up a bag of something. And channeling that energy and trying to do something different, something creative, something with your hands, something that you enjoy. And that's really the first lesson that I learned. Moving on to the second lesson that I've learned, and this is something that, it's funny, I analyzed in the past, I kind of knew about myself, and yet I had forgotten, I remembered, and it's funny how I keep going through this, and even this very week, I'm still relearning this because my behavior, sometimes I don't analyze it while I'm doing it, and then I reflect on it later, and I think, oh, that's why. Lesson number 2 is sleep, and how much sleep or lack thereof impacts my hunger. Sleep or lack thereof impacts my cravings. So the bottom line is, at least for me, when I don't sleep well, when I sleep only a few hours a night, my cravings go through the roof. And I happen to crave foods that are high in fat, foods that are high in calories. I crave the worst foods that you can imagine for weight loss. And so this is something I knew about myself years ago, and I had thought about it, but it's something I don't always readily remember. So I've been trying. Sometimes it's more difficult on some nights than other nights, but trying to have better sleep hygiene. And again, that's even a separate topic in and of itself. But sleep hygiene, if you already have problems with sleep, you know that hygiene has a lot to do with what time you go to bed, how much exposure to artificial light you're getting before bed. Are you relaxing? Are you taking maybe a warm bath before bed, different or lukewarm? Different things that you can do to help yourself. Drinking some sort of herbal tea to help you relax. Doing meditation. There's meditative yoga. There's so many different things that you can do, like a relaxing yoga. But when I don't do those things, especially, and I know that I am having problems sleeping, the next day I will wake up with the worst cravings, and I'll try not to give in to them, but sometimes I will. And then the amount of calories I'm eating is just through the roof. And it's kind of like, it's almost, I'm being unfair to myself because I'm really not even in the mood for those foods, or I'm not even craving that many calories under normal circumstances, but I lose the sleep, I crave all the food. And so that's something that, until I get the sleep in better control, and I think still with everything going on, sleep is going to be challenging for me for different reasons. But it's something I need to take, kind of keep a closer eye on, and something I'm still working on. So if you happen to have, problems with sleep, and you notice that your cravings or your hunger is a little bit more, it's, higher than usual, take a look at that and see how what steps you can take to improve upon your sleep. I know I'm doing all sorts of things. When I meditate, my sleep improves. When I meditate before going to bed and meditate throughout the day. I'm also using something called tapping. I'm using that on occasion, and that is helping as well. There are some days I don't do anything because I just don't feel like it, and then I don't sleep as well. That's, we all go through those types of things. But sleep and how it relates to my hunger levels, my craving levels, is another overarching kind of lesson that I've been learning along the way. So lesson number 3 is very tied into lesson number 2. So 2 is kind of being aware of my sleep. Lesson number 3 is being aware of my stress levels, which have been pretty high, running pretty high, especially these last few months. But even before the pandemic, my stress levels were running pretty high, and that was one of the reasons that I ate. And they still can run high, but I'm trying to learn different ways of controlling my stress levels. So same with sleep, things like meditation, things like just relaxation, things like, for sleep, it's like a lukewarm bath. For stress, I find that, actually very, very hot showers kind of relax my muscles. So for me, I sometimes wake up, unfortunately, with stress. I wake up with a lot of tension. And so I tend to take, if I, time it out that way, I tend to take a very, very hot shower in the morning. It relaxes my muscles. It already helps me feel a little bit less stressed. But there's so many different things that I've been doing to reduce stress. And why? And it's because when I'm very high stressed, same with lacking sleep, I tend to, number one, crave bad foods. Number two, just my hunger levels are a lot higher, and sometimes my hunger is almost insatiable, and I notice it. I'm very stressed, and no matter how much I eat, I still feel hungry, and that's not normal because, when you eat a certain meal that normally would satisfy you, when you're still hungry, chances are there's something else there, and that's what happens to me when I'm very stressed out. So what I would do, and if you have the same issue with stress, is I like to just Google, I go on YouTube, I look for different, coping mechanisms for high stress, and I figure out what works for me and with my body. I think everyone has different needs and everyone has different things that work for them, but there are things that are making me feel good, things that are making me feel better, and being aware of the fact that, hey, you're stressed, or hey, you're not sleeping, your hunger levels are a little bit higher today, and trying to see how I can cope with them when I know it's kind of it's a false hunger. It's a hunger that's based on other things that aren't necessarily real hunger. So being aware of those things and trying to do my part to improve upon them is something I'm learning. Okay, lesson number 4, and that is prioritizing. That's something that I've definitely been more focused on thinking about throughout this time, and prioritizing what? Prioritizing what is important to me in my life. I think throughout this pandemic and just throughout different times in my life, you just wake up and you have your breakfast and you start working, and or you drive to work, whatever you do, and you just start focusing on that, and you just go from routine to routine without really thinking about big picture at times. And this time that we've had these last few months, I have taken the time to really sit down, make lists, and prioritize what is it that's been going well for me, what is it that hasn't been going well, what is important to me in my life. And when I sat down, when I made those lists, losing weight got really high at the top of that list, along with other big ticket items. And I thought, why have I been putting this off for so long when it's something that's so important to me? All these other things can come and go, but this is something that I really want to fix and tackle and, get back to a healthier weight. So sitting down and prioritizing, and it's funny because you're watching this because it's about weight loss, and maybe that's something that's important to you. But when you sit down and you make that list, who knows what's going to climb to the top of that list? Because once you write down all the things that are important to you right now at this point in time in your life, take that list and then prioritize it. What makes number 1? What makes number 2? Whatever those things are, this is the time to focus on them. Maybe it is weight loss, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's something else that you want to do. Maybe it's time that you spend with your family, that you've been, neglecting, not in any bad way, but something that you haven't been focused on as much. Or maybe now you've been spending so much time with your family and you're really happy about that. And you're like, now it's time for me. Now it's time to focus on something that I've wanted to do. Maybe you've been wanting to write that novel. Maybe you've been wanting to start a business. This is the time to sit down, list those items, prioritize them, and start working on them little by little. And guess what? We're going to revisit point number 1, which was focus. Focus that energy that you have, whether it's that kind of anxious energy or that energy that makes you nibble. Take that energy and channel it into something creative, channel it into something positive that you want to focus on for you. Okay, the 5th and the final lesson that I've learned, and I talked about this a little bit before in the previous video, but that is, and it sounds a little bit insignificant, but it's really not. celebrate small victories. And that's across the board, you know, whether, you know, as it pertains to your family, as it pertains to you, as it pertains to weight loss. For me in particular, I've been celebrating it as it relates to weight loss. Why? Because in the past, I would lose some weight and I'd be happy about that, but I didn't really, and when I say celebrate, I don't mean a full-blown celebration. I just mean like in your head, you know, you really think, wow, that is such an accomplishment. You know, you're super happy about it. You think about where you were this time a month ago and how much progress you've made, or 2 months ago. And you really look at that number on the scale when you've been losing some weight and you really celebrate that. You might, so things that I do, I might look at the scale, see that I've lost weight and think to myself, oh my gosh, I wonder if that blouse now fits me. And then I'll try on the blouse, maybe it doesn't fit me, but sometimes it does, or whatever other article of clothing. Or I'll think to myself, boy, I've been losing this weight, and you know, the last time that I weighed this much, I'll look at the number and I'll think to myself was, you know, it was a year ago, or maybe it was 2 years ago, the last time I actually hit this number, and that makes me happy. In the past, I think I've gained weight and then I would lose some weight and I would be happy about it, but I wouldn't celebrate it as much, focused on what an accomplishment it was. And that's something I'm doing more now. And I think it's something that's helping me kind of take this whole process and continue to stretch it out, because it's going to take me a while to lose this weight. I need to keep the enthusiasm for myself. I need to keep the momentum. And by celebrating these little small victories, it's kind of keeping, it's like the parade. The parade is not ending. Whereas before I'd be like, I'd lose the weight and I'd be like, okay, maybe I'll gain it back now. And I wouldn't do that consciously, but maybe, you know, I would gain some of it back, then lose it again, gain it back. And now I'm progressively, sometimes it's slower, but I'm continuing to lose. I'm not having these big rebounds, but something I'm doing differently is I am celebrating it more. And I mean like internally, like in my head. I'm really like, if I want to hit, for example, when I made it from the 200s to the 190s, I couldn't believe it when I saw that number on the scale. And what's funny is in the past, I'm like, well, it's not in the 120s, so there's really nothing to celebrate. Well, yes, there is. I mean, that's a huge difference from being, and I'm not saying being the 200s is bad. It's just that as you climb, you know, down closer to your goal, it's something that you have to recognize as such an accomplishment. And you're the only one who can kind of really celebrate it truly internally for yourself. People can applaud you from the outside, but what really counts is how you feel inside about that. So that's something that I'm really happy to be working on. And as I progress, now I'm going to give myself really different treats as I go, you know, and as I make this progress, because I want to really celebrate it when I hit certain milestones. And I'm going to buy little things for myself, and I'll talk to you about that in another video. But I'm really going to celebrate with certain milestones. But even just little celebrations, something I love doing is trying on different articles of clothing. Not every day, because things aren't going to fit from day to day necessarily, and that actually I think can detract from your progress. But maybe after a few weeks, or maybe after 3 weeks, you know, trying something on, or again, just thinking about when the last time I weighed that much, just different little even mind tricks that you kind of play on yourself and say to yourself, wow, I'm so much further along than I was, and not focusing on that final number as much, but focusing on just where you are now, what progress you've made. So celebrating small victories is something that's really helping me out tremendously, more than I even thought it would. So that's it, guys. Those are my top 5 lessons that I've learned. I know they're high level. I think as the next time I make this, I'm not going to do it for every milestone, but I'm going to do it when I think I've learned a significant amount. And maybe I'll be a little more specific in the next video, but those are the lessons that are helping me. If you think that some of them have helped you, give the video a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe, hit that red subscribe button and ring the bell so that you'll be notified of the next video. But thanks for joining me on my weight journey, and I'll talk to you soon.